The next file we'll look at is the Android manifest XML configuration file. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close up the res directory here. Now within this app module file here, source and main, you're going to find a file called androidmanifest.xml. Go ahead and double click and open that up. So as you can see, there isn't too much going on here, especially because we don't have any particular activities, so we'll look at adding those in a moment. Starting with the basic tags here, we have the primary manifest tag. So pretty much the only thing you'll need to worry about here is the package attribute here, which dictates essentially the unique identifier for your application. So hypothetically, let's say I uploaded this application to the Google Play Store under this particular package name. And let's say I wanted to update this application so that it does something actually useful. If I was to actually change this package name whatsoever, then I could not actually update that same application. It would be uploaded as a completely new application. So whatever you pick for your package name, which was dictated when we created a new project, just understand that if you want to update an existing application, this attribute here, package, must be the same thing. Now there are a lot of different things which you can put inside of the manifest tag here. So we'll talk about application in a moment, but one thing which might be readily important for you to know is that within the manifest tag we can specify permissions for the application. So let's say, for example, that we want our application to be capable of sending SMS messages or text messages, that kind of thing. In this case, we would want to use this or add in this uses permission tag. In the application tag, we'll find different sort of global configurations for the application. So you can specify the primary theme of your application. In this case, it's pointing to our styles.xml file or a resource within styles.xml called app theme. As you can see from the mipmap resource folders, we're specifying different icons. Supports RTL is basically if you want your application to be usable in countries which write in a different direction than in typical English. Label is more or less the name of your application. Now, like I say, there are a lot of different things you can put in here, so those are kind of just the general points. What we'll look at next is adding activities into our manifest. To put things in simple terms, an activity can be thought of as a primary user interface screen for your application. So for example, if I'm looking at my friends in Facebook, that could be one particular activity. Then if I'm looking at my current messages, that could be a different activity. And then if I'm looking at my news feed or something like that, or the posts feed, then that could be its own separate activity. Now we have to be a bit careful here because recently application developers on Android have typically begun to prefer having a single activity architecture. So I just want to mention that it's going to be a little bit confusing, but for the time being, just think of this word activity as a primary user interface screen. It's one of the primary building blocks of any Android application. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an activity. So I'm going to go to File, New, and we're going to go down to Activity, way down here, and we're going to create an empty activity. We're going to leave pretty much all the defaults here, so just go ahead and leave that thing called main activity. Make sure generate layout file is ticked because that's going to add a layout file into our res layout directory. Layout name activity main is totally fine. We will check this launcher activity box here. Package name, just leave that where it is, and the source language will need to be Kotlin. Once all of those things are selected, just go ahead and hit finish. Alright, so in using that activity wizard, we've actually kind of done three different things. So the first thing we did is within our Java sources, understand we also put our Kotlin files here even though it says Java. In our Java source files, it has added a file, a class file, which in this case is Kotlin .kt file called main activity. Now notice that in this onCreate function, don't worry too much about what it does, but just understand we have this function down here, set content view. And notice how that is pointing to the layout file which was also generated. So if you're wondering what this R thing is, this basically stands for resources, and it's like a giant directory which we can use to refer to things within our resource directory in our application. So I'm going to once again open up the resource directory. Then I'm going to select Layout, and as you can see, the wizard has added a file called activity main into our layout. So that's the second thing the wizard did for us, but equally as important is that that editor added an activity tag to our manifest. Now, if you don't use the wizard to create a new activity, you can actually just, for example, right-click on the Java source directory, go to New Kotlin file, and we can call something like Preferences Activity. You can do this if you want, but it's not actually that important. And then from there, we could add in manually another layout resource file. So for example, like activity preferences. Now, if we do this manually, we have to be especially important that the activity is registered in the manifest. So using the wizard adds an activity tag into the manifest, and that little checkbox that said something about launcher activity basically added this intent filter tag here. So all of this crap basically just means that this activity will be the first one which is run when the application starts. So this is almost kind of similar to like a function main when it comes to building pure Kotlin applications. Now, if you were to manually add an activity and a layout file and not include an activity tag for it in the manifest, then if you tried to actually run that particular activity, you will be met with an error. So like I said before, there's a lot of different things we can specify in the Android manifest folder, but hopefully that gave you a good starting point.